Dan, if you wanna go ahead.
It's your job.
Yeah.
You're the chair.
Yeah. This is just the boarding house, so it's all pictures and whatever.
Everybody's got to sign it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it is 9 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting to order, and Carrie, if you want to conduct the roll call, please.
Stan.
Here.
Steve,
Here.
Aaron. Here. David
Here.
and Heidi.
Here. First order on the agenda is the approval of the agenda along with the minutes of the past meeting, and those were emailed to you. Would anyone care to make that motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing, and Carrie, if you want to listen.
Yep, so the application is to request a variance from the development ordinance requirements of a building to be placed 50 feet from a property line setback. So the application was made and were you all able to open that or
Oh, okay, well,
couldn't get it open? We need to figure out a different way to do that. So, the barn that we're talking about was moved. And then it was found to be too close to the neighboring property line where it was placed at, so the variance requested is to allow it to stay where it's at and not meet the 50-foot setback requirement.
And it was like 6 feet short.
Mhm.
We have background report at this time, with the applicant to speak.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Jason Aldinger, new to the community. There's a lot of little details here that we tried to put into this little packet here. If you guys have one, if I go through, I mean, has anybody here driven by the barn?
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, everybody familiar with where it was? Okay, and there was a process like to go through to move this, right? And there was multiple people, multiple companies, multiple things that we had to do to get this done. And I realize this is all hinged on the variance now, but we made a lot of steps to make sure that we did things correctly. And that's kind of outlined here in this. And everybody here that was, or everybody that was part of the move is here. So that if you have questions directly to them, they're willing to answer, you know, whatever they, you know, did or how it went or whatever. You know, there was, like I said, multiple things. We had to contact Alliant to move the power. We had to have the county fill in a ditch and put a culvert in. We had 411. And one of the calls that we did make was to the county to see if we needed a permit. And we were told no. And unfortunately, we can show you the call made in this pamphlet here, and Matt's the one that made the call. And you can see the date, the time, everything that was made. And unfortunately, he didn't call the right department. And the department that he did call just said, hey, they asked him a bunch of questions. They knew the barn, they knew where it was, they knew where it was going. And then their comment was, look, this is Grundy County. We try to stay out of people's business. We don't care what you do with it because it's going on your property from your property to your property, and just don't leave it on the road. So we were like, that's kind of a funny answer, but great. You know, everybody likes it when they're just given the freedom to do what they want, right? So, you know, obviously we proceeded. Paul's over here in the corner. Paul's the one that did the concrete work. He came in and poured the frost footer. Matt's the one that moved the barn with his father. They're the ones that made the arrangements with IE to raise the power lines. They're the racers here. He's the one that made the arrangements with the county to fill the ditch and put the culvert in. You know, then Paul came back after Matt had moved the barn and raised it, or Matt raised it so Paul could put the walls under it. And there was, again, I think the reason we're here is because one of the neighbors is not happy. Because at the time, if you're familiar with the area, and you can look at this survey map here, it'll help explain this. The property that I currently own is there, the barn is in red. It shows the setback, it shows the red line where the neighbor owns is a driveway. And then there's also some property where the community trail is there. And we did cut the fence and we did drive through their property and they got very upset about that. And I can understand that we didn't communicate with them about what we were doing, unfortunately. But you can also say here that there's an active easement that allows us access to that property. And I just feel that they didn't know that about their property. And so, again, I'm not saying we did handle it the best way. I apologized. I offered to make it right. I said that I'd put the fence back. I did everything that I thought I could. We were just told to stay off the property. And so we did. And Matt wasn't finished with the job. They literally had to lift all their equipment up out of the pasture into the street to get it out so that we abided by that request. But again, if you look here, sorry. Right there. So that's the language that shows the easement. And I've had Steve, I can't remember his last, Cox out. Steve surveyed everything. Steve has also found this paperwork that shows this. I was told about this when I purchased the property, so I figured when my neighbors knew they've owned the property longer than I had. So I mean, the language is there. And I mean, this map shows the issue. Again, I offered to make it right. I offered to put the fence back. We're told to stay off it. We've abided by that. Again, I want to put the fence back too, because the pasture's traditionally been used to raise cattle. And we haven't been able to put cattle in that part of the field this year because the fence isn't there. And that's another part that I'd like to bring up is if you look at the history of the property, there's a beacon report here that shows that it's been considered agriculture for the last 50 years. And when I bought it, it changed. So the way was instructed or told, the reason that there's this new thing that either, I don't know if it's Grundy County or Iowa in general, that when a property changes hands, that they're turning it into residential or something else to get the tax money, and you have to file a Schedule F for 3 years, prove that, and then it can go back to residential. And again, when we called about the permit, was told that we really didn't need it, I figured it was because agricultural is exempt from any of this, right? And obviously the property is being used as agriculture. I mean, if you look at the picture, and Michael Muller's here, he's had cows out in that pasture for at least 30 years. He recently baled the grass or cut the grass and baled it. I mean, he's got cows out there now. So I don't understand why it wouldn't be considered agriculture. And again, The Beacon says this is not for zoning purposes, this is for tax purposes. So I really struggle to understand why it's not agricultural, because it's what it's currently been used for. It's what it's been used for traditionally. And we have, again, there's a write-up in here that the Iowa Barn Associations did, explaining that, this is, good thing that we did. Like, everybody told me, why are you gonna spend the money to move this barn? Just tear it down. Well, the barn needs work. I wanna continue to fix it and make it better and restore it. But I've just stopped at this point because I don't know what's gonna happen. That letter explains that how many barns are lost and the fact that the heritage of Iowa and the barns is going away. Because, for just today, the barns aren't necessarily useful for the farmers. So it's really gotta be someone who wants to save the barn. And then the other thing to go back to, why isn't the property considered agriculture is, there's literally a USDA report here that we got printed off that says the federal government considers it agriculture. But for some reason, Grundy County is not considering agriculture.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, is there any public who wishes to speak in favor?
I get
You
a
have one?
little bit,
Okay,
sorry, I
sorry.
know I might be a
No.
little windy, but this is important to me.
No,
And
I'm sorry.
Yesterday, we asked Carrie for the list of people that got the notices of this hearing. And I can tell you, I've talked to all but one of them. The Mueller family supports the barn being where it's at. The Wilcox family supports where the farm's at, or where the barn's at. Joel is here to support where the barn's at. I mean, everybody that was given a notice, there was the people that own the farm ground next to the Wilcoxes. I've not met them, but I talked to him on the phone. He said he was gonna try to come, supported that the barn be there. So we really only have one opposition to it. And I really think it's just a thing where we got off on the wrong foot. I don't see why we can't rectify that. I'm willing to rectify that and move forward.
And he's acted, I'm Brooklyn, by the way, this is my uncle, and he has acted in good faith in everything he's done, so maybe there have been lines that have been crossed and it might have not been done properly, but his intentions have been good, and he doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings or step on anyone's toes. He wants to do things the right way, and that's what we're trying to do.
And again, everybody that was involved is here, so if there's any questions for them, they're more than willing to take questions.
All right, thank you. Yes, at this time, if there is any public who would like to speak in favor. And I guess you don't want to identify yourself before you speak, please.
Joel Hayes, I live directly west, a half mile from the house he's currently remodeling. We share a pasture fence. I also share a pasture fence with Druvigas. I want to say Mommers, sorry, but Druvigas here. Call it the Mommer Pond. The pond next to it there. I've been I don't know, I lived there 7 years maybe, so I drive by this barn at least twice a day. I watch your guys' fireworks as they go off, which is more than fine with me. So I'm a neighbor to a few people there. We're familiar with the molars. And, I watched this barn project go on, and I will say, I thought kind of crazy for moving that barn. I would have burned it myself, but I appreciate your desire to preserve it. There's something to be said for that. And I will say that, there was probably a few mistakes made here, but I don't think it was in a menacing or willingly way anything here, for 6 feet is what we're talking about here from that wall to the table here. I just don't see how not getting this variance, like, lives are not gonna be changed over these 6 feet. but there could be a significant amount of money, lost by these 6 feet if it was to have to move. And I just don't understand how that does anybody any good for it to, for this variance not to happen. It's not, I don't believe harming anybody, and I can understand there might be some complaints about it, but, 10 years ago, I built a shop on Highway 14 on my property, and I know that I didn't even make one single phone call for any type of permit, and I allegedly might say that it's probably not within that 50 feet from the property line. And, never heard a word about it. So I appreciate what's going on at this property, the work that's being put into it, the taxes that I pay on my house. I can't imagine what you're gonna have to pay when this whole project is done on your place there. But, you know, to stick it to a new community member who is improving his property significantly would definitely put a sour taste, in my mouth as well. So, no, I would be heavily in favor of granting this variance, is what I would say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
And I met him yesterday, so it's not. So, this is all from observation.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak at this?
Over here, little mouse in the corner.
Okay,
I'm Niall Dielsnyder from Conrad, and in a weak moment, I agreed to be Grundy County's representative for the Iowa Barn Foundation. Jason already talked about it. You got the letter from our president and from one of the directors in support of preserving this barn. And the key point is barns are such an iconic part of the Grundy County and Iowa countryside. As Jason said, they're just disappearing at an alarming rate. A lot of them are due to neglect. And I would just urge this group to err on the side of historical preservation. Once a barn is gone, it's gone forever. They're expensive to maintain, they're expensive to upkeep. They really don't fit today's farming standards. So when a family is willing to invest a large sum of money in preserving, you know, part of that history of Grundy County, I think it's very much worthy of your consideration to allow this variance. So.
thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? See that? At this time, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak against? And again, if you'd like to identify yourself first, or to speak.
I'll speak, not necessarily against, but
Okay.
just to make a comment. A little backstory. This is the first time we met Jason. We own the property. I'm Brett Badker. We own the property just directly north of Jason's property.
I'm Christy Jurgenka. We're co-owners, and then there's 2 more owners, or his wife and my husband. And then my parents owned it before since like 2001.
So we're not necessarily, we don't want the barn tore down. No one's ever said that. We have no problem with the barn. It's not in our front yard. We just have a little issue with how the whole thing was handled. And like Jason's claims, he called everybody that was given notice. Well, the only person he didn't call was us, who directly was affected. And the last time we talked with Jason,
Which was only once, right?
once, was back in May, when we offered solution, a phone call, fix the fence, which he could have done from his property. And I talked to Matt Furno about grading and repairing the damaged ground, and that all could have been done 4 months ago, and it all went on. We had no problem with the barn sitting where it is.
We also sent a temporary construction easement that was never signed for access to our land. So we had to halt all access to our land because it wasn't signed. So we did have to get the sheriff involved a few times to just make sure nobody was accessing our land, because we weren't even aware this was even gonna start until a neighbor or a friend drove by and said, hey, I'm pretty sure they took your fence down and are ruining your land by moving a big barn across it. And we're like, wait, what? Hold on a second. So then that's when we tried to call, figure out who owns that property, who bought that property. Tried to call, we emailed multiple times, and no response. So
So going back after we had spoke with Jason, we reached out, found him, and we offered a temporary construction easement, which if he was agreeable to. We presented that, he came back to us and said he thought it was 7 pages, and it was something that she had found online, we kind of just copied and pasted. It was too, I don't know, difficult or something so we dumbed it down, 4 pages, offered it back to Jason after we spoke on the phone with him. At this time, we didn't ever get anything back. We also added, after talking to Boulder Contracting, they said it was typical in Iowa to request a temporary easement fee, which we only put $500 on as very bottom line. Thought that was fair for where we were at in the process. Sent that back to Jason. We didn't hear anything for about a week. After that, we got a text message from an administrative assistant, Mary Findley. And she claimed that they would not be signing any easement, and it was being forwarded to their attorneys. We were given that contact information. We reached out to them twice and had no response back ever. So we're just in the dark, and then it was over. And that was our last communication with anybody. So, I mean, I don't know what we were supposed to do, just give up. But at the end of the day, where the barn is doesn't affect us. It doesn't bother us. And this all could have been handled 4 months ago with a phone call or a meeting. Even when we spoke on the phone with Jason, he explained to us that he was gonna be back in a couple of weeks. We invited him to come over and we would talk it out and figure it out, and never heard anything again. So.
And when the barn was moved to, it was after a 2-week period of rain, so it did destroy that part of our land quite a bit. And the fence, like you said, the fence is still missing. So that's kind of what the temporary construction easement went over to, was, hey, fix the land, like you have a duty here to restore it back to its original state as much as possible. So that was kind of another reason why we wanted that construction easement, to ensure that whatever they destroyed, they would fix.
Yeah, I think, and that's all I really had. Otherwise, the only question I would have for the board is, I know it's 6 feet, like Joel said. What is 2 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet? Is it, what is precedent? Is there a precedent set where we don't follow the setback rules? So if I claim our property is agricultural next year, we can build something next to the fence, next to the bike trail. I just don't know. I know it's a case by case and there's a million different scenarios, but.
It's still on a case by case basis. There's no set
Mhm.
rules that we follow by. We try to follow the rules, what's in the and the law, in the ordinance that we have, but each case is done separately.
Does the same apply for floodplain? If a property is 1 feet below a floodplain versus it's out of a floodplain? Is there a variance that can be applied for? If we wanted to build a house that was in a floodplain?
So that's a process. If that's the situation, you have to go through FEMA to try to have that taken out of the floodplain, which I just dealt with one of those. But I'm not allowed to issue any permits in a floodplain. That has to go through the county engineer, who's the floodplain manager, which your dad had to do when he built that building out there.
Okay. Other than that, we don't have anything else to say. I mean, Jason, I'd like to have a cordial relationship with you, but
Is there anything on the other side of that fence from the barn besides just the land itself?
there's the gravel lot, which is private property.
Yeah.
And
There's no
obviously,
building or anything like that over there?
no, it's basically the entrance to the property driveway. It's a long lane.
If I may, everything he's saying, we talked and agreed on things. They sent me a proposal. I sent that proposal to, Mr. Bidwell of Marshalltown. I don't know if anybody knows him, but he's a lawyer in the local area. He said, don't sign this, and the reason is, and I have an agreement on my phone still, we can print it off. It didn't have a legal description of their property or my property. So it was so vague. It was literally, he laughed at it and said, this is just printed off the internet. He says it doesn't do anything for either one of you. And that's what he said, if you give me some time to put something together, he would put something together. They attempted to put something together a second time, but again, it had no legal description of either property. It didn't even have an address on it.
You said you wanted a one pager.
I said the first, and I have it on my phone, was 13 pages long. And it was printed off the internet,
Agreed.
which you just said, and it didn't have the address on it, correct?
No, it
So-
did. It had the description from the deed, actually.
So I mean, like
So
I
it
said,
had it used to be a railroad or whatever. It had the legal description. I copied and pasted from the deed into that. So it did.
I was given legal advice from actual lawyer, and I followed it. And we did not go on the property after we were requested to not go on it. And Matt's here to say that, and Paul here to say that. They actually spent an extra day or two doing what they had to do to abide by your request. So I don't think, I mean, at the point that you just asked us to stay off, we respected that. And that's why the fence hasn't been put back, and that's why we didn't wanna create any more. We figured just let it lay, and we'll go through the process and see how that goes, and then. We'll do what we are told we can do legally, not what we think we can do.
But we did offer to just talk it out correctly and work with you, and
I don't think
Crickets.
if Matt, you were there,
I worked with.
was
Matt.
there an offer to talk it out, or was there an offer to argue about it?
Well, I mean, me and you talked, Brett, I mean. You gave me permission to get on the land one day, and then you told me, hey, get your stuff out, and then the next day. You said we couldn't do that anymore. So that's where when we went through the county ditch, and I told you. You and Jason, I'm not, like, I'm friends with Jason, we don't really know each other, but I'm not gonna get in the middle of your guys's, I mean, you guys are neighbors. I told you I would fix a little bit of ruts and stuff, but I want, before I go up there with a skid loader doing work again, I want you guys to get on the same page. Cause I don't wanna, I don't wanna be up there. Like I said, I will still to this day, if something gets all figured out, I mean, those big concrete blocks are right there by the fence line, we still gotta get them out of there. Yeah, we will fix whatever needs to be fixed, I'm not against, and I mean, that night you called me, I told you. I'll head right up and meet you, I mean, like I said, I don't wanna I have nothing bad to say about you, I mean, but you guys are the neighbors, I just don't wanna,
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
yeah.
We're getting into a discussion that we shouldn't have in front of this board.
So, yeah.
This is a discussion to be done between both the parties to get together and figure this thing out.
I agree.
Because when you come to this board and we end up doing something, that's final. So you need to talk to each other. It sounds like you guys don't talk to each other, and what you need to do is talk to each other, and it could have been resolved, and we would have been through this thing a long time ago. I'm sorry, I just have to say, we're not here to argue back and forth. That's not what our job is.
So at this time, I guess, after that, if there are any other, just points that we need to know before we have our discussion as a
Well, I'd
board.
like to ask Jason a question. What's the barn gonna be used for?
The same thing has been used for 20 years, or 30 years, actually. We got cattle on that, we wanna put the fence up and put the corral back up and keep cattle out there. It's hard to do that when you don't have a fence.
Where's the manure gonna go?
It's
Okay,
pasture.
we're 6 feet away from their property. I don't wanna see it end up being next to the property and end up coming back here again.
It'll still be pasture like it has.
Okay.
It's not gonna be used as a control type area, it'll be used as a catch pen to gather cattle. They're there for a day, they're back out, so they will not be for feeding cattle, whatever. And if I interject about the fence, if you do look at the fence line, the fence that was cut is actually Jason's responsibility. As far as the property line goes, if you would do your handshake on the property line,
The fence that was cut is actually Jason's responsibility to maintain. And the other half of the fence would be their thing to maintain. I've actually maintained that little triangle that they drove through for the last 20 years. I've done the weed control. I've done the mowing up to their fence and to their gates, and there was trees I've taken down.
Okay.
To keep that up, so.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak before we close the meeting? Close the public hearing, sorry.
I would like.
Okay.
So you're not opposed to location of the barn? But you may not agree with the variance. Is that right?
We really don't have an issue with any of it, and we would have expressed that to Jason if we would ever, was given.
Just
an
so the board knows
opportunity
that you're
to.
not objecting to the location of the barn and the
Right.
setbacks.
What's your name, sir?
Yeah, could you speak, your name?
Oh, Paul Van Ham, yeah. Foundation guy.
Thank you.
I think that's great, by the way. I think barn, that's where the barn should be. I'm sorry we got off on the wrong foot and we did leave some ruts in the ground. It was wet. We thought we had permission to go through there.
Nobody.
So, and that can be rectified
contacted us.
monetarily and physically fixing the ruts, so. We never walk away from a project with
No.
damage to anybody.
I appreciate that.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Eric, would you have anything that you would like to?
Yes, since this is my first Board of Adjustment meeting. Just wanted to be clear as to the purpose of this meeting because there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot going on. This was an application for a variance because the barn is now 44 feet from a setback line, and our code says that it should be 50 feet. So the question before this Board of Adjustment is whether or not you should, well, I guess basically, first off, whether this property is exempt as an agricultural structure being used for agricultural purposes, in which case we're done pretty quickly, or whether at this point you need to consider granting a variance. In order to grant a variance, you have to find and specifically state that there are special conditions and circumstances that exist that are unique to the land, the structure, or the building involved that are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. This property is zoned as what, Carrie?
It's zoned A, ag.
Okay, so it's zoned A for ag. Other requirements are that this be a permitted use, that you make a finding that the reasons stated in the application justify the granting of the variance. That the granting of the variance is in harmony with the general purpose of the ordinance, general purpose and intent. That granting the variance is in conformity with the Grundy County Comprehensive Plan. You can make appropriate conditions and safeguards as contained in section N of the ordinance. We can go through that. And E and F are not applicable. So I am looking at page 86 of our development ordinance to kind of set forth the things that you have to find are factually true. So at this point, there's been a lot of talk about a lot of things that have nothing to do with the variance, which is fine. But if you have any questions specific to the application regarding what I just said, now would be the time to get some clarifying answers from the applicant and neighbors or whatever.
I have a question for you. You said the first thing we have to do is decide what the land is for. Isn't that a zoning board, not ours?
Section 2 of our ordinance states that in accordance with Iowa Code Section 335.2, so this is Iowa Code as well as our ordinance, No regulation or restriction adopted under this ordinance shall be construed to apply to land, farmstead, farmhouses, farm barns, farm outbuildings, or other buildings, structures, or erections which are primarily adapted by reason of nature and area for use for agricultural purposes while so used. So abandoned barn not being used as a barn, this ordinance would apply. Barn being used as a barn, this ordinance would not apply. But it is the responsibility of the person claiming the property is exempt to demonstrate that it is used for agricultural purposes. So there is a caveat. That being that this exemption does not apply to any structure, buildings, dam, obstruction, deposits, or excavation in or on the floodplains of any river or stream. And it's the policy to seek voluntary compliance. So, I think the questions are, is this currently being used for agricultural purposes? Is this in a floodplain of any river or stream? And if the answers to those questions lead us to the next branch, which is this ordinance applies, then it is, are there unique circumstances to this land, to this building, that justify granting a variance so that they can be within 6 feet of the fence line, or of the boundary setback requirements? And then we can go down that rabbit hole. Things that are not pertinent to the discussion. Easements, the procedure up to this point of asking departments or moving stuff or that kind of thing. Is this used for agricultural purposes? Is this in a floodplain of a stream or river? Then we get into, are there special and unique circumstances that justify granting a variance? And then we can go down that.
First question then, is this in a floodplain?
Surrounded by it, but where it's at, it's not.
Pardon?
It's surrounded by floodplain, but where it's at, it's not.
And if I may add, there's a map that shows the floodplain and the barn location. And also Steve Cox did elevations on it and has got a letter here saying that he, what?
Floodplain gets a no.
No.
Okay.
So it's not in a floodplain. And your intent is to have cattle
Definitely.
and have that in that area. Yeah, just a minute.
So those two answers are yes, then we have to look at the variance.
We need to close.
But
it.
also it's zoned as agricultural already, so.
Yeah,
it's a-
I think-
So we don't have anything to do with it.
No, that doesn't automatically exempt.
Oh, it doesn't know.
95% of the land that's in Grundy County is
Yeah.
ag, so.
So,
I live on an acreage. It was zoned A1 for 7
Yeah.
years.
you're switching it.
I'm not a farmer.
Right. Oh, now, we're going to close the public hearing before you go into more discussion.
If you are done with questions, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask the members that are here? Are we ready to go into discussion?
I don't have any questions.
This time then, I will close the public hearing and we will have and enter into board discussion about allowing the variance. So you've determined that it is not in a floodplain. The intent is to explore the fence. Step that in the barn. Does anyone have any other thoughts? Questions?
So the property has been used as ag up until now, cattle, correct?
Yes, we're in the process of replacing all the fences on the property.
So then there will be.
There will be, there is on the actual line on the property, there are cattle located on the property. But we're working on replacing all the fences in the property right now
Okay,
to get them all up to snuff.
okay.
So it will be used for ag.
The point to make a motion.
Are those the 2 points, Erica, that exempt it, not in a floodplain, and it is and will be used for ag, and we don't?
Then it's an agricultural structure that is exempt from the ordinance. If you want to get into the other. If you were to go down the other path, we can certainly talk about that.
So what do we have to do?
So
Say it's an
if-
agricultural building?
If
and
we did, do we make
Do we have
a
to make
motion
that?
just
in
that it's been
here?
determined? I guess I'm not sure how the.
Yes, I think for record purposes and for the minutes, having finding as a board, number one, whatever the finding is, vote on it. Second finding, vote on it.
Okay.
Third, etc.
Okay. So then I guess our first determination would be if we've determined that this is used for ag
I'm
purposes.
assuming like you're
Yeah.
telling, we're gonna vote on if it's in the floodplain, which we know it's not. Do we have to vote on that when it's not?
For purposes of keeping a clear record, yes.
So. We need
So
to,
then I would make a motion that that barn is not in the floodplain. Is that the correct way of doing that?
That'll work to find it, to find.
Find it.
okay,
There's
fine.
adequate evidence to find that the barn is not itself in a floodplain.
Okay, if that is the motion made, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, do we need a roll call vote on this? Okay,
I think it's a motion, so you can
Okay.
just do.
and take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And the second finding would be if it's considered being used for agricultural purposes. And the
Well,
determination
since it's
is-
gonna be a barn and there's gonna be cattle there, I'd move that it's agriculture.
Okay.
It's defined as an agriculture area.
I'll second
There's
that.
a second.
word? I wanna make sure we get it right. Area or zone or.
I appreciate your attention to detail.
If you're here, Erica, we are going to.
Yeah, so it determined that it is a farm barn being used for agricultural purposes.
That's actually what I said.
Yeah.
I'll-
That's what I
I'll
heard.
second that.
And second that, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who second that?
Steve. Okay. Okay, and so if we have determined that, is there anything more for us to?
I think probably a
Just
final
the finding.
statement that this is not subject to the ordinance.
So I guess the next item would be, if we have found that it is not in a floodplain, it is being used for agricultural purposes. And will continue to be used for that, that it is not subject to this ordinance,
In this board.
to this, yeah. So would anyone care to make that motion?
Well, I would so move.
All right, is there?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Yeah. Is there a closing statement to be made?
No, so this board is quasi judicial, which means they make their own decisions. So it doesn't have to go on to the Board of Supervisors. There's no follow-up meeting or anything, so their decision is final today.
So at this time, I would take a motion to adjourn. Any of that motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Coming.
Appreciate your guys' time.
I hope you guys get together.
So.
Right. Tried a lot.